It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, everybody, right here to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. As we said earlier on, we're going to get into a conversation with regards to gender-based violence. Now, we know gender-based violence is an infringement upon our human rights. We know this. And this morning, we're joined by Jessica Dewhurst, the CEO of the Justice Desk, which is a human rights organization working across Africa, now alongside Ignatius France, a training coordinator at the organization. They have, in conjunction with other international human rights organizations, recently made a written submission to the UN about the scourge of gender-based violence right here in South Africa, which has been published on the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights website. Now, they are joining us via video call. Welcome, Jessica and Ignatius.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Morning, thank you.
Morning, guys. It's an absolute pleasure having you in the studio this morning. Now, Jessica, I've got to ask you, how significant is this acknowledgement from the UN's Office of the High Commissioners for Human Rights?
It's quite fantastic. As a human rights organization, we've been working across South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe for about 7 years now. And we've been working very closely with the UN to make sure that within all three countries, people's fundamental human rights are respected and protected. And I think for a long time, they've been taking a lot of what we've been saying quite seriously. And I think especially with this latest report on gender-based violence, it's something that the United Nations feels very strongly about, and us as an organization as well. So yes, a couple of our partner organizations up in Geneva in Switzerland, we got together and said, let's put together the submission. And we were very happy that the UN accepted it and will be discussing it at their next Human Rights Council meeting. So yeah, it's been quite fantastic.
Ignatius, in the submission as well, you mentioned some shocking statistics. Maybe you can share them with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Look, when we put this together, the idea I think behind it was to kind of paint a picture by numbers. And one particularly horrific or horrendous number was the fact that of reported rape cases, only about 20% of them go to trial. And of that 20%, only about 8.6 of them really go to the level where there is a conviction attached to it. And so for us, I think as the Justice Desk, when you're looking at the broader picture of gender-based violence, that for us painted a picture of an ineffectual criminal justice system that really needed some work. Yeah.
Now, Ignatius, you mentioned in the document that you wrote that the quest to effectively deal with the scourge of GBV in South Africa requires a sort of multifaceted approach involving the law and community-based education. But what are your recommendations when it comes to this? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes. So when part of the recommendations, or rather when we looked at what needed to be done, we considered, the law is one element of it. But for instance, when we look at the law, we're looking at police officers, we're looking at the prosecutors' offices. And so that's one aspect of it. And there's a lot of work that needs to go into that. So that's one of our recommendations, is that, for instance, police training needs to be reconsidered. It needs to be something slightly longer than what it currently is. And that basically means because police officers are required to know the entire spectrum of South African law. And so if you are expected to know the entire spectrum of South African law, there needs to be sufficient training to prepare you for that. And so one of our recommendations is to emphasize the training of police officers. And then I think the other recommendation that we made focuses on, so the multifaceted approach that you mentioned is about the community as well. So when we look at the stats that I gave you earlier on, we're looking at the conviction rate. So in between the investigation and where someone is actually getting convicted of the crime, there is a lot that needs to happen. Communities need to play their part in terms of being able to provide evidence, being able to work together with police officers as witnesses, so that when something happens, there's actually enough evidence to actually lead to a conviction. What currently is happening is that communities are saying, it happened, we're done. The police must take over and the criminal justice system must do its work. But we as communities also have a lot of work to do. And so that's the multifaceted approach, is not to say that it's only government that must lead the fight, but we as communities have to join in and make sure that when these things happen in our communities, we stand up and we speak out.
I love that, and I love that we're having this conversation so that we can start keeping people accountable for their actions. But maybe, Jessica, where can people read the submission and also find out more about the work the Justice Desk does?
The submission is up on the United Nations General Assembly website, so you can head over there. But also you can find us by going to our website, www.justicedesk.org. We're also on all the social media platforms at the Justice Desk. And yeah, we do a lot of work in regards to gender-based violence, human trafficking, children's rights, and human rights education. And in order to overcome gender-based violence, but just general human rights violations, we need absolutely everyone in every sector to get involved. So we really encourage people to get in touch with us, whether that's in becoming a donor, a volunteer, an intern, a supporter, whatever the case is. We will help train and equip you to become a human rights defender in your community. As Ignatius said, we can only do this if we work together.
Absolutely. Jessica Dewar, CEO of the Justice Desk, as well as Ignatius France, Training Coordinator at the Justice Desk. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely great work that this organization is doing. As they said, it is all about the community. We can fight this, but we need to stand together.